Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. This is it, the conclusion video of ETC 2022. What a journey until this ETC. Lot of training, lot of thinking done, lot of discussion, and then this 6th game where everything was decided. So what I will show you during this tournament conclusion is first the result, then the list analysis like I usually do with my matrix. Then I have some experience or lessons learned, after that some impression, then some answer to the people who ask me question in related to the ETC more in general, and then at the end I have a gallery with some music along to follow. So the result, we ended up being at the 5th place, which was obviously a bit disappointing for us since we targeted more, but I think somehow makes sense since we lost big to Spain that we didn't end up higher. Basically, we saw the gap between Spain and us during this last round, and we know that basically they work harder than us, they were better prepared, they had a better meta, and that made the difference at the end. So that's it. I won't talk much about the drama between Spain, Poland, but here you see the result. I think no matter what, it makes sense that these two teams are at the top. I'm a bit sad for the Denmark because they made an amazing ETC. They beat us, they beat Spain, and then they lost the last one against Poland. But I mean, until the 5th round, they did a very good tournament, and they ended up 6th. I think they deserve a better placement than that. It's not really showing the type of performance they've been doing because they had very hard opponents. So congrats to them. They made a very good tournament overall. And yeah, congrats also to Italy for the 3rd spot and beating France in the last round. Well done to them. Regarding my list, so I fill my matrix like I usually do. I think as we can see from the first look at the matrix, basically a lot of action that went well on the 2 first games, and after that not much action. That's particular for the ETC. I know that for some people it's kind of boring. I don't really feel so. I feel that even standoff games are interesting. Obviously, I wouldn't like to play such game during years and years all the time. It's also nice to have some action sometimes, like I had during this tournament. But I found during this event I had a good mix between some low risk wins where I was in control of the macro basically. Some standoff-ish where I really needed to avoid to make any mistakes. So I had a good mix, and then 2 shooty list and two rounds where we had a lot of fightings and very open and interesting games. So I had a good mix between all games, which was quite interesting to follow and obviously also to analyze. Regarding the unit, I think Great Khan, a good build for the point that he cost. I think it's a good threat with the multi-wound weapon. Did a good job at zoning, did a good job in the combat that he managed to do in the first 2 rounds. Provided leadership 9, so basically very good job from the Great Khan. The BSB, basically it's an additional Merc, the 7 Merc, 18-inch BSB offers a lot of flexibility. But I think since I had Shaman plus Khan within the Merc Vets, I should have tried to find points for the Discipline banner. Shaman, overall I got, what I figure out is the fact that you at ETC level, you don't get any interesting Wrath of God when casting all the time 3 dice, or you need to be very lucky. Which is exactly what happened basically all the rounds. Since my Shaman is very expensive, I didn't cast more than 3 dice. So my opponent, when the Wrath of God was good, they just dispel it, and then I was left with casting -1 resilience to help my shooting, Hand of Heaven or Trial of Face, and then maybe Chilling All when the opponent has shooting, which is not much, but still I did quite a lot with the couple of blasts that I cast. Trial of Face and Hand of Heaven performed really well for me, so I cannot complain too much, but still I felt I missed something with Magic Face, and at the same time I felt that I missed Shamanism against the shooty list, especially the game against ID. I saw a huge difference between this year game and the game that I had last year, where my Shamanism would do much more wounds and be a bigger threat to the War Machines. Core, Nothing particular to say. I think the core setup was fine. Maybe the only problem that I had was the fact that I had too many scoring units on Capture the Flag, but I will talk about that maybe later. But I was quite happy with the core setup. The Tuskers, I think they are very well balanced unit because they are very good on the charge against the right targets, but then they are at the same time kind of hard to move around and can be trapped easily by the right counters. If I think at all the games that I've been playing with the 4 Tuskers, in most of the game I can say, oh, I didn't want to face that unit. I had some heavy counters that I really needed to avoid, but then if I can get against the right target, they are good. So I think that's typically the type of balance that I like to see in the game, because they are hard counters, quite a lot of them, but at the same time they are good, very good against some precise target or on the charge with some buffs. So I felt that that was very interesting. I had some issue in the game 4, like you saw in the battle reports, to really risk them more because they cost so much. So that was a bit of an issue. Mercvets didn't see much combat, but did a great job from distance. Probably my tournament MVP. Basically, they were useful in all the games. So they delivered from range. They are sensitive to range damage, so they missed a bit Shamanism to protect them better, and they didn't see much combat. Maybe I could have at some point bring them more into combat, but I went for safe place basically and used their range damage mainly. Saber-tooth Tiger, yeah, the mandatory piece of chaff. Frost Mammoth, flexible monster. I didn't use much the aura, but still the aura was useful in the matchup or in the macro of the matchup sometimes, thinking about the elves or some particular combat. So I didn't use it, but at the same time it was still very helpful, and I felt it's a good monster. I mean, it has 10 attacks, some impact, it can bring some shooting, it has an additional spell, so I felt overall it brings a lot to the list, and also was capable to do some fighting on its own. Slave Giant, as always, I think it's a helpful piece on the weak flank, annoying for the opponent with the March test. He died in most of my games, basically in 4 games he died, so it's like his destiny is to die, but it's always an annoying piece, always a flexible piece, and doesn't cost too much, so I was okay also to sacrifice him a bit. Regarding secondary objective, as kind of expected with my list, I have good bolt control, so I won 3 of the 6 second objective. I lost breakthrough against KOE, which was expected due to both lists. I lost flags because, yeah, it happened like it happened, and spoil of war, but maybe I would have lost it anyway, I don't know. It threatened me so much from range damage that maybe I was still in trouble. And I think regarding flag, the huge issue that I had was the amount of scoring unit, and the fact that I have 3 units from my core that are a bit out of the game. I lack chaff also in those games. So I think what I could have done potentially is switch 1 unit of bruisers and 1 tribesman from the 11 for 8 dogs in core. I think that would have been a good unit to be an additional chaff and tight chaff, annoying unit, can also charge some stuff. So I think that would have been a very good change to the list that I could have tried at least. But I didn't identify that also due to the fact that during this whole year, the game that I played on Capture the Flag, I always managed to save myself from defeat. And therefore, so yeah, that's just a type of game that are a bit more standoff, but it's still okay to play. But I still feel that it was a bit of a problem for my list. Matchup rating, I think most of them are okay. I would like to say regarding Sylvan Elf, I put at the beginning 7 in the Matrix. At the end, we ended up, we changed it to a 10. I think the original estimation around 7, 8 was indeed accurate, and this one I don't think, when I think again about it, I don't think that it's not a 10 and an 8 because of the shooting and so on. I think it's not a stable 10, it's an unstable 10, because basically I have to go for it, I have to be aggressive, and then it's a 10 that can go a bit either way. So I think it's still a 10 on paper, but it's not the kind of 10 that I have identified, basically. Performance feeling. So despite the fact that I won big against Len, I felt that I took too much risk in this Death Star combat against Gotak and Wild Earth. I although I shouldn't have lost so much according to the start and my what I remind from the battle report, but still I should have lost combat and take a test, which is always going to be a risk. So I think here I should have taken less risk and find another way to have a less risky situation. I just put that down to the fact that I wasn't still properly entered in the tournament, and a bit of maybe rustiness, I don't know. I was in vacation before ATC, which is not ideal as well as a preparation. So I don't know, it was down to that, but here definitely I made a mistake. Game 2 and 3, I felt okay about what I did on a macro and micro level. Game 4, definitely my biggest regret of the tournament. I think I have huge potential to win big this match, but I failed to really switch on, to be aggressive. After turn 1, I needed to push and to go for it. And here, I just missed training. I didn't train, I didn't do that during almost the whole year. There wasn't a shooty list like that, where basically I had to switch on and then move forward from a defensive position to an offensive one with such a gap. So I didn't feel comfortable and didn't saw at the moment how to do it properly, and basically I failed to do it properly and ended up losing. And then against Gaza, no big regrets. I just felt that I could have had a better macro, and obviously the estimation that wasn't accurate. Overall, my estimation of all the matchup that I had is a 56. I ended up with 67 points, which is not bad. Obviously, I expected a bit more, but like always, I don't like to lose. I think like most players, so that's how it is. I expected slightly more than that. I think I wasn't far from it. Obviously, I can have some regrets on this game, but the other 4 games, I was quite happy with what I did. So definitely biggest regret here. And here I felt slightly unlucky. I could have done slightly better to avoid that, also in the list building and so on. So from some half of it is down to luck or dice, which happens, and the other half is down to list construction and also deployment to maybe avoid that situation, and obviously estimation of the matchup. So some good learnings on the last game, obviously against Gaza. Lessons learned as a team. I think the last game showed us that we need to train more if we want to compete with ETC winners. It's not more complicated than that. The last game was quite compelling about that. When I saw the Spanish guy, they all had a small book with them with all the list analyzed, all our list analyzed in more details, showing who is doing what. Everything much more prepared than us. Probably they trained some of the match as well, maybe all the match, I don't know, but basically they put more effort in, and I think they deserved also to win. And we know that if we want to compete with them, we need to do more. It's as simple as that, and all the rest that I could be telling you will be related to that. You cannot replace training. I think to a certain extent, you need to do the minimum required, which is quite high. The minimum is quite high for ATC level if you want to win it. Team of 8, also something I figured out this year. First of all, you almost never get your better matchup. You often get your 3rd or 4th matchup. And the second aspect is the fact that at ETC level, there are more range damage oriented lists. I think the gap between team of 5, 6 or team of 8 is exactly that. Is these 2 or 3 lists that will be more a shooty defensive approach, and therefore you don't have the occasion to train much against this type of opposition in tournament of 4, where you have often 4 close combat oriented army. So I think that's a huge difference, and that's also where maybe a perspective that I missed in my list building at some point. Map analysis that I did in the train was very useful to check all the maps on all round, what side I would pick, where I would put my token, or what piece of train I would pick as a king of the hill. That was very helpful to do that with a cold head before the event. I was very happy to have done that. Matchup estimation, overall I felt okay with the job I did. I knew how to identify a good and a bad match. I didn't get so many good match. Maybe I could have, at some point I didn't maybe put enough positive matchup. That's possible for the software to give me better matches, so that's down to me. At the end, that's the good thing with our software, is you just end up based on what you give. I mean, if you give a lot of very good rating, then you are more likely to get something than if you got all your rating between 7 and 11. So it's also down to that. Overall, quite happy about my macro. I think I made rather good deployment. In some games like the Sylvanev could have been slightly better, but generally speaking, I think deployment-wise, my game was okay. When I was attacked, I knew how to defend, and I did that. I felt quite good. But then what missed was definitely the part of how to switch from how to play good against lists that out damage me from range, basically, more or less. That I already talked about. And then training, I think 2 aspects that I would like to underline. First one, I didn't face enough shooting list. So game 4 I didn't manage to push properly, and game 6 I didn't manage to defend optimally, so to say, or perfectly. And also in my training games, most of the time I played secondary objective that makes game interesting, but I think I should have trained a bit more on boring scenario like flags, so to say. Definitely not a secondary objective that I trained a lot, and that's also one of the reasons why maybe I missed something in the list building and the way to play it better also. Impressions, that's very personal view. So 4 hours per round, 2 hour break lunch. I felt the timetable was perfect. It's enough time to play, enough time to eat, doesn't stress too much the people to give us the lunch, doesn't stress the judge too much for the points and pairing and so on, give us time to review the list during the lunch. So I felt that was perfect. Overall, regarding the drama at the end of the event, I think this cannot happen again. That's just my view of the story. We don't want such negative events to happen again. I think there are a lot of reasons why this has been discussed enough, analyzed enough, so I don't need to feed anymore in that, but overall, we need to avoid that happening again. That's it. I think it's something to think about for both probably Spain and Poland. I think there are both some learnings to take from that, definitely. Also something to think about for the judge, for a lot of people. So definitely, I think we can all improve in this regard, but the chaos that happened at the end, I felt this cannot happen again. Stop the captain meeting or votes during the event. The judge needs to be the one in charge of decision and probably increase the amount of judge. I think that's pretty clear. I had plenty of time to play 6 turns, and I felt on the chess clock topic, because very often when you talk about a problematic game, the conclusion ends up being, oh yeah, but with chess clock that would be solved. Cool. But if you check in most games that are problematic at high level, chess clock are used. So they are not the solution to problematic game, in my opinion. I think chess clock put kind of a negative atmosphere around the table when they are used. Personally, I don't like to use them. The option that I would propose is rather, if you feel that it's needed, just track the time on a sheet of paper. You take a sheet of paper and then you write down how many times we use per turn for each player. And then at the end, if there is any problem, you still have that data at your disposal to use it in any way that you use appropriate to. But then in 95% of the case, you just won't use that sheet of paper, and yet you don't bring a negative atmosphere and like tension at the table with chess clock. Because let's be honest, with chess clock, you can still abuse it, first of all. Second of all, it just reduces the human interaction between both people. You just talk less, you enjoy less, it's even more close and less let's do it together. It's like, who is doing what? Like clock. You ask me that, clock. I answer, clock. It makes the game, for me, it's not what 9 Stage should be about. And I think 4 hours is plenty of time. I had plenty of time to finish all my games, even the one with a lot of fightings like round 2. So I think it shouldn't be a problem. And if you feel that it could be a problem about timing, you can just write down the time and still you have data at your disposal, and that's enough. And for me, that's rather the solution, but I don't think that chess clock are appropriate. And as long as it's not, I feel that if we make that mandatory all the table at ETC, it wouldn't be the right solution and would just make a strange atmosphere around the table. Definitely. According to rule pack, max 2 coaches per team. I think that was an issue. Also, the fact that some teams had more than 2 coaches brings sometimes pressure around the table, or too many interaction possibilities. I think we need to stick to that. Bad behaviors need to be penalized harder. Definitely, I think with more judges overall, we can spot more bad or not tolerated or not expected behavior in the room, and then it needs to be penalized harder. Something really not okay should be straight away. Like if you see something that's not okay, time wasting, cheating, and so on, it's like a yellow and then it's a red. You don't come next year. That's it. I mean, something harder, and then gives people the time to think about. But when there is drama and then arguing against the judge and so on, shouldn't be tolerated. So I think here we have maybe harder solution needs to be taken for next year to also prevent situation like end of ETC happening. That's what I would like to say. So I think, like I said before, that's what I would like. I was trying to say before. I think everybody needs to look how he approach these games and what kind of ETC experience he wants to have. I think it's definitely possible to have enjoyable, friendly, competitive game at the same time. It's not one or the other. You can play together, enjoy it, agree on stuff, and play, and just try to have an enjoyable game for both. And I think that's definitely possible even at the top level. So everybody need to look out for himself. If he's fair enough and have a fair picture, take a mirror and have a fair picture of what kind of ETC experience he had. And if he had, I think like most of us, if you have a bad experience in a match, very often you have a part that you played in that, very often. So I think it's important that every of us that had maybe bad experience during ETCs need to reflect on that and make a self-analyze and see how they can improve that. And by being more friendly, I think we will all gain more enjoyable experience. So I'm always sad when I read bad experience. I didn't had any bad experience this ETC. Enjoyable games, fair opponents, and that was perfect. But I always tried as well to come with a good mindset, to be like smiling and positive, and make a good atmosphere around the table, agree on stuff, discuss before, like not say, oh, I also declare my intention to make it clear for him what I'm trying to do, and if he see any problem, he can tell me straight away, and then we make it correct during the round that it's done, to avoid all the problems. I think a lot can be anticipated before it comes to a huge problem and it snowballs. So I think for that you need communication, and for having communication you need a good atmosphere at the table. But again, that's my perspective of it, and I feel that I enjoy much more ETC and this type of events since I'm trying to have this mindset. Conclusion, regarding Switzerland, we challenged for the title, which is what we wanted, but we had at the end a reality check against Spain, and we saw still the gap between them and us. Regarding my preparation overall, didn't train enough versus shooty list, so something that I missed a bit. I trained a lot against combat army. Too much drama for the win, like I talk enough about that. And maybe I felt like a narrow top if you compare before COVID to now, maybe back to a normal ETC in terms of size of the event. I felt that we saw some surprise, or maybe what felt surprise a couple of years ago, like France beating Poland. You see that it's getting narrower. We got also Denmark beating Spain. So we see that maybe it's get more competitive towards the top, and it's very challenging. Still at the end, Spain won it. They already won a couple of years ago, so it's still the same favorite for the win. But I think regarding the teams that are trying to reach it, it gets narrower and narrower, and that makes things very interesting. And that was basically the table at the end of round 5. You can see how close it was. And then last but not least, I also ask you if you had any question regarding ETC or my experience more in general. I've received some of them, so thanks to the people that sent me questions. Always happy to discuss that. The first one asked me about team selection. So basically in Switzerland that's done by the captain himself, plus 2 or 3 experienced players from the team. We have very stable team. I think that's one of the strengths. We have often similar players. Like this year we all had at least 3 ETCs experience, so this helps I think a lot. We had some lists where we had we needed, basically there were like end minute decision whether or not we bring this list on another one. I think overall that's due the fact that we didn't have the best roster is also due to the fact that we maybe didn't play enough, and therefore we didn't had enough time to train some lists. Like we missed maybe on the KOE, for example, that was really strong. So definitely it's down to more playing would help us to pick better the list and not making some bets. Like the Demon Legend was a last minute choice. The Sylvanels was still like we didn't had a lot of training with it, so we took some risk on some list, and not everything paid off basically. And some of the lists like mine was stopped and was decided since a long time because I had a lot of experience with it and I thought that it worked quite well, and I felt also very comfortable with it. So I think it's also down to the player, what they like to do, if they try to surprise a bit, or if they try like me to get as experienced and as comfortable with it as possible. This also makes later the matchup rating easier. He also asked me about the Wolves Dargot list. I think Xavier, our captain, found a very good one. He asked about the Wretched one. I think Wretched one, yeah, it's tricky. It makes maybe the matrix of the player a bit different than the more all-round one like Xavier list. Definitely had some good matchup. I think the Wretched one maybe try to play also on the fact that some players will not be prepared to face that, or will not know all the tricks that can happen with the Wretched one, and therefore might underestimate or not play correctly against and be punished. So I think it's also an aspect of this list and a reason maybe of the France list. Some other conclusion as a team, we did a bit worse than the other year, or the opponent stepped up. I think overall we did more or less the same type of ETC that we did the previous year, to be honest with you. Being it a 2nd place or a 5th, 6th place, I think it's more or less the same. Every year, the 3 last ETC, we compete at least for the podium. This year even more, we competed to try to win it. So I think overall our performance wasn't too bad, but again we saw the gap that maybe after last year we felt that the gap between 1st and 2nd wasn't maybe as much as expected, and that we have a chance maybe to get it at some point. And this year we saw still the amount of job that was left to reach that. But I don't feel that overall we've performed worse than last year. It's also a momentum aspect when you face which team giving you an option for the podium or not. Like last year we played France and won big the last round, helping us for the podium. And this year we played them and won, but round 5, which brings you to another momentum, because then we face Spain, but later. And last year I think we faced some other teams stronger, but before. It's also about the momentum when you're facing which team. That helps you, and on which secondary objective at some point. Do you think that your roster choice were the best overall? No, definitely not. I think we missed the KOE. Beast Herd, we can talk about it. You also need to have the player for it, but definitely KOE missed. Like I said, we made some bets with our meta. Some of them worked well, others didn't work so good. So definitely I think there is some improvement room for our roster choices, but it's down to playing more, definitely. And lastly, how do you rate the Ogre Khan right now in the international meta? I think the Ogre Khan is perfectly balanced. Internally, you saw the ATC list. It went from almost full shooting, like 4 war machines and a bit of combat. Also, then you have Wild Dot list, very aggro, MSU type of list. Then you have my list, very blocky. So I think it's possible to do almost anything with this book. So internally, the balance is really, really good. And then externally, I felt we are average somehow. I think definitely competitive. Some good matchup, some worse matchup. Definitely the kind of power level that we should be looking for the books. I think that's my vision of it. I was really happy to play them, and I think there are still plenty of options with this book. So yeah, very happy to use Ogre Khan, and I think we are lucky at the moment as Ogre Khan players. So guys, that's all for my video. I will now leave you with music with all my picture from ETC to let you have a look at my experience. Thanks a lot to the Danish guy that took the pictures. There is some photograph from Denmark that took some amazing picture. I took some of them. So I will show you some of the picture related to Switzerland, generally speaking, that he took, or my army and so on, to just give you more impression about my ETC. And let's talk soon on the channel about other battles. Bye bye.
What you know about rolling down in the deep? When your brain goes numb, you can call that mental freeze. When these people talk too much, put that shit in slow motion. Yeah, I feel like an astronaut in the ocean. Ay, what you know about rolling down in the deep? When your brain goes numb, you can call that mental freeze. When these people talk too much, put that shit in slow motion. Yeah, I feel like an astronaut in the ocean. She say that I'm cool. I'm like, yeah, that's true. I believe in G-O-D, don't believe in T-H-O-T. She keep playing me dumb, I'm a player for fun. Y'all don't really know my mental, let me give you the picture like stencil. Falling out in a drought, no flow, rain wasn't pouring down. See, that pain was all around, see, my mode was kinda lounge. Didn't know which way to turn, flow was cool, but I still felt burned. Energy up, you can feel my